left-handed from three. Holcomb soaring in again. Just uncanny knack. And cashes in.
Is on the upper left wing. Just got inside. Circles around. Pure.
Game 3 wasn't basketball. It was pure robbery. The Indiana Fever were in control, battling with heart, when a flood of whistles completely flipped the script. Just like that, the Las Vegas Aces found themselves living at the foul line. Aya Wilson was throwing elbows with no calls, while Aaliyah Boston couldn't even get a fair challenge acknowledged. Everyone saw it. The fans inside Gamebridge, the millions on social media, and the box score that doesn't lie. The truth? The Aces didn't beat the Fever. They were gifted that win. Worst of all, it buried Lexie Hull's gritty, career-defining performance. Can the Fever bounce back? Comment. Let's go Fever.
A'ja Wilson sets a screen where she extends her leg out, but of course they call the foul on Lexie Hull for A'ja Wilson's illegal screen. Then A'ja Wilson and NaLyssa Smith totally foul Michaela Timpson, but there is no call. But it took a 1-point lead going into half. Now we're up by 3 and they call a foul that isn't a foul. So we don't get calls when we're getting hit, but the Aces get a call when nobody touches anybody.
Game 3 was ugly, but let's not act like this was the first time Indiana had to battle two opponents, the Aces and the officiating. From the very start of the series, the whistles have leaned toward Las Vegas like a built-in advantage, tilting the balance of competition. Fans saw it in Game 1. Every time Vegas needed momentum, they found it at the free throw line, while Indiana's physical, disciplined defense was punished differently. The Fever would body up, force tough shots, yet somehow those trips ended with the Aces shooting free throws. That tone carried over, and by Game 2 the trend was impossible to ignore. Each whistle felt louder, each call more lopsided, feeding the same narrative.
Where she thinks she was able to find any flow, and when that was the case, what he's trying to do is Jones start things.
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor, and that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively, we didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it.
In Game 2, the whistles piled up quarter after quarter, and what began as small frustration snowballed into a steady disruption of Indiana's rhythm. Enough for Stephanie White to call it out after the game. By Game 3, it wasn't just a pattern anymore. It had become a wall the Fever couldn't climb. The breaking point came in the third quarter when Aaliyah Boston attempted to challenge a foul on Jackie Young. White motioned for review. The bench signaled, but officials refused to acknowledge it. Moments later, Chelsea Gray drilled a three. Just like that, the Gamebridge crowd shifted from roaring with energy to stunned disbelief as Indiana's hard-earned lead disappeared.
A'ja Wilson is 1 for 12. And the foul is called on Boston, and that will be number 2 on Aaliyah Boston.
You saw Indiana picking up full court pressure defensively, and if you're Aaliyah Boston, that's the one spot on the floor you did not want to get a foul call.
And Stephanie White is trying to challenge it and did not call the timeout in time. Gray in the corner. Cut it!
It wasn't just about the scoreboard swing. It was about the message. The Fever had fought hard to build separation, only to see it erased in seconds by whistles and another Vegas bucket. Gamebridge fans erupted, arms waving, voices booming at officials who appeared unfazed. Almost instantly, clips of the sequence went viral, with analysts pointing out how the denied challenge flipped the momentum in a single possession. Those same breakdowns also spotlighted the Aces' constant flops, sneaky pushes, and relentless elbows, plays that somehow slipped by without more than a glance from the referees.
2-minute recap from last night. So A'ja Wilson pushes Howard pushes her in the back. It's a foul on Howard. Look at this. Aaliyah Boston gets totally fouled by NaLyssa Smith. Like, it's obvious, but no call. And then A'ja Wilson gets the call for not half as much. And then NaLyssa Smith gets the call for not even getting touched. Here's a replay just to prove it to you. Yep, didn't get touched.
That's what makes it feel less like oversight and more like favoritism. Io Wilson could lower her shoulder into Boston. Defenders hit the floor without a call, and wild flailing somehow counted as defense if you wore a Vegas jersey. Meanwhile, every ounce of contact from Indiana was whistled like a felony. The shift wasn't momentum built through skill. It was momentum gifted, with referees wielding whistles like weapons and tilting the game away from fair competition.
Offensive foul, practically a football check, and the Aces score. So now the Aces cut it to 2, and then A'ja Wilson sets an illegal screen, and they tied things up. And then Lexi Hall gets called for a foul for doing nothing. They just had 2 illegal screens they didn't call. All right, so this is fair. Same thing happens on the other side, but they don't call a foul for Kelsey Mitchell. So Leah Boston gets called for this foul for getting her arm grabbed, but Stephanie White can't challenge. They won't let her. That's the second time this game they didn't let her have her challenge. And then A'ja Wilson starts acting like a big baby.
And while that kind of officiating might have broken the spirit of a lesser team, one Fever player refused to let Game 3 be defined by bad calls: Lexi Hull. How often does a player who, on paper, probably shouldn't even be on the floor, nearly swing the course of an entire playoff series? That's why Hull became the real headline. She wasn't supposed to be out there at all. After aggravating her back in the opener, she entered Friday listed as questionable. Her practice time had been limited, her movement stiff even in warm-ups, and expectations were understandably low. Yet instead of logging a few spot minutes just to spell teammates, Hull transformed her night into a performance that carried weight. It was the kind of gritty, inspiring effort Fever fans will remember long after the series is over.
Austin has the mismatch on Lloyd. Help comes. Kick out. Oh, will fire. And hit from 3. His last 2 positions inside from Indiana. Smith tied up by Hall. And a jump ball between Smith and Hall.
She battled through obvious pain, yet delivered a stat line that could have belonged to a fully healthy star. 16 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal, all while shooting an efficient 6 of 10 from the field. Even more clutch were her 3 triples, each one landing like a lifeline whenever Vegas threatened to seize momentum. Those shots also tied her with a franchise playoff record across 2 games. 8 total threes, an achievement few expected from someone fresh off a questionable injury report. Her 16 points marked a new playoff career high, but what truly stood out wasn't the box score itself. It was how she earned it, diving after loose balls, crashing into crowds for rebounds, and putting her body on a line in moments most injured players would instinctively avoid.
On the left side of the floor, just a clear out, letting Jackie Young go to work.
Jackie Young with 17 points. Boston to the corner. Hull, catch, fire, and hit. Correct call. Evans dishes. Ray whips a pass inside. What a denial from Lexi Hall.
The Hull able to save play.
12-point game, a little under 2.5 to go. Hall hits Indiana's first field goal of the quarter.
There were stretches where the camera caught her grimacing in pain, her face tight with discomfort. Still, she battled in the paint, boxing out frontline players and chasing rebounds that should have belonged to taller aces. She dove onto the hardwood, wrestled for boards, and somehow found the composure to rise and hit big shots. Each play gave Indiana jolts of energy whenever the officiating threatened to drain it away. Even as Vegas piled up points at the stripe, Hull kept the Fever alive simply by refusing to let possessions end quietly. That's why the crowd rallied behind her. They recognized the player sacrificing everything because her team needed her.
Back to Hull, wide open 3. He's good.
The floor that she wants, doesn't it?
It does. Mitchell, connect. Here's Mitchell. Mitchell, one more. You bet.
And that's what made the entire night feel so wrong. On the same night Lexi Hull delivered the best playoff game of her career, the conversation was hijacked by officiating. The whistles that flipped the scoreboard and overshadowed her grit. That effort should have owned the spotlight, yet it got buried beneath controversy. In many ways, Hull embodies this Fever squad. Underestimated, beaten down, but unwilling to fold. She became the picture of resilience. And if Hull was the image of fight, then what does it say about Las Vegas that their biggest star barely showed up? Imagine being the face of the league, an MVP candidate, and going nearly 3/4 without hitting a shot. That was Aya Wilson in Game 3. She opened with a confident three-pointer, as if foreshadowing dominance, but the rhythm never followed. By halftime, she was a shocking 1 for 11 from the field. She finished at just 6 for 20, scoring 13 points on 20 attempts. That's not only subpar by her standards, it's poor for any starter in the WNBA. Instead of attacking the paint with her usual force, Wilson drifted away from contact, settling for contested fadeaways and awkward looks. Time and again, Aaliyah Boston stood her ground, forcing Wilson into uncomfortable, low-percentage shots. By the end, frustration was written all over her game.
And then here we go. She gets foul called with a 3-point game for, I don't know why they called that foul, but it's the third quarter and they want them to win. So here we go. Ace is up by 3. They call another foul for A'ja Wilson that isn't a foul. All right, so then they call another foul on the Fever that isn't a foul. And then to end the game after it's out of control because the Fever had a 6-point lead, but they kept calling fouls, another foul for A'ja Wilson that's not a foul. Ball don't lie. A'ja missed 11 shots in a row during this game.
Despite Wilson's struggles, Vegas still walked away with a win, and that's what stings most for Fever fans. The Aces didn't need their star to look like herself because everything else tilted their way. Between favorable whistles and timely performances from her teammates, they found just enough. Jackie Young carried the load with 25 points, burying momentum-shifting shots every time Indiana threatened a rally. Chelsea Gray chipped in a steady 15, mixing jumpers with crafty finishes to steady their offense. Even Kelsey Plum, inconsistent at times this postseason, delivered stretches of scoring that kept Aces afloat. Piece by piece, they patched together enough production to pair with officiating breaks and tilt the night back in their favor. What makes it harder to swallow is the coverage that followed. Wilson's 13 points on 6-4, 20 shooting told the story of a rough night, yet much of the media spun it differently, crediting her all-around impact, pointing to rebounds, blocks, or shifting the focus onto Vegas depth. What was buried? The real reason she looked so ineffective: Aaliyah Boston's elite defense. Possession after possession, Boston hounded Wilson, denying her space, pushing her into awkward angles, and erasing the easy look she normally feasts on. When an MVP candidate shoots just 30% on 20 attempts, that's not a slump. It's elite, relentless one-on-one defense that deserves recognition.
2 as well.
Here's Hull. Working behind Boston. Boston was open. Great take, and Boston lays it in.
At the same time, Wilson still impacted the game physically, just not in ways that earned much respect. She threw elbows under the basket, undercut box-outs, and flailed long arms into Indiana players with little consequence. Yet the Aces kept reaping the benefits. Afterward, Becky Hammon even complained that Wilson absorbed too much contact, pointing to her single free throw attempt across 38 minutes. The irony is hard to miss. This is the same Vegas team that's practically lived at the foul line through all 3 games. When you've enjoyed more free throws than your opponent all series, complaining about calls feels pretty hollow.
Sims, voice short. Look at Hull coming screaming in for the rebound. Boston trying to body Wilson, and does. Sims back to Boston, going back to work and dropping it in. An aggressive and effective Aaliyah Boston.
The truth is, Indiana bottled up Aya Wilson. They executed the defensive game plan you're supposed to against the league's top player, and yet they still walked away with a loss because the whistles softened the impact. That's what makes Vegas's win feel hollow. Instead of their superstar proving why she's the best, she was rescued by officiating and teammates who picked up the slack. That's not a statement win. It's a protected escape. Now the focus shifts to Gainbridge Fieldhouse, where Indiana faces one final chance to rewrite this poison narrative. Sunday isn't just another playoff game. It's survival. Game 4 is the Fever's last opportunity to show they belong against a franchise that has seemed to benefit from every break. Down 2-1 in the series, worn down by injuries, and forced to fight more than just their opponent, the Fever enter the night knowing one loss ends everything. That contrast sets the stage for a game where absolutely everything is stacked against Indiana.
This first half, Young attacking and denied. Simpson on the block. Hull needs some help. Dump it in Boston. Find the cutter. Timpson lays it in.
The Fever didn't lose Game 3. They had it stolen. Indiana built a lead, defended with grit, and then watched referees hand Las Vegas free points at the line. That wasn't basketball, it was interference. Now Game 4 is about more than survival. It's about exposing how hollow those Aces wins look when the whistles stop bailing them out. If Lexi Hull guts it out again, if Kelsey Mitchell find her rhythm, and if Aaliyah Boston keeps punishing Wilson inside, Gainbridge can explode into chaos. Add 17,000 fans pouring energy into every possession, and this series can flip. Indiana's season isn't over. It's only getting louder. Do you think the Fever can bounce back? If yes, comment asterisk, let's go Fever. Asterisk, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Click the video on screen. We'll see you next time.